All right. Good night, everybody, or good morning, good afternoon, whatever time zone you might be watching this in. For me, it's night and really feels like night. It's a rainy, wet night here in Vancouver. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the US and Canada admissions process. Um, we'll spend a bit of time talking through what you need to do as a grade 9, 10, 11, what the process is going to look like, what type of documents you're going to need, all of that. The one thing as we're going through this, it says US and Canada admissions process. North American education is pretty much the same, but we'll spend a little bit of time looking at some of the differences. I'll outline what those look like. And then at the very end, we'll have a little bit of time for question and answers. My name is Phil Kay, and as you can tell, I'm from Trinity Western University, and it's on the screen there too. Trinity Western is located in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. We're the largest Christian university in Canada, and about 40% of our population is from outside of North America. So I've been at Trinity Western for about 8 years now, working with international students all the way along. And this presentation that I'm doing is one that I've done on 3 different continents. I can't remember how many different schools and how many different times. So if it feels like this is relatively natural, or if I'm speeding through it, that's because I'm really used to it. But hopefully you'll get something out of this too. I also have Jennifer here with us tonight. I'm going to ask some very specific questions of Jennifer throughout, and then maybe she'll have questions for me at the end. There are like 4 things I really want you to remember at the end of this. There's like 4 words that are really, really important. And if you don't remember all of the details, at least remember these 4 big concepts. So the first one here is research. The first step in the admissions process is for you to do research. And you need to do a lot of research. You need to research a ton of different things. I've got a small list up on here. You should be researching majors, not just what does a particular university or college offer, but what do you want to do? What do you think you should do? What are you good at? What do you think you could do for the rest of your life or even a portion of your time? Spend a lot of time talking to your guidance counselors, your teachers, parents. Also looking on those university and college websites to see what are possibilities out there. Spend a lot of time looking all the way across the board about what you might want to do. Do a bit of time looking into accreditation. You want to make sure you make a good choice about where you're studying. Accreditation is a reputation for an institution and how other people will view your degree when you're done. You want to research things like location. So I said cold and rainy Vancouver, which many of you might associate with that. But if it wasn't cold and dark and rainy, I'd see mountains out here. So do you want to be in a place with mountains? Or what about near a big city or in a warm area or small town? Or do you want to be in a small town near a big city? Those are all different things that you're going to kind of want to look into. And because those are important. If you're from a big city or a small town, you want to look into those types of things. Look into local connections and networking. Are there other people from your high school who have gone to a particular college or university? Is there a community from your area? Are there local restaurants that can give you the foods you're used to? Family members in an area that maybe you could stay with or connect in with. So those are some of the really big things, but then you also just really need to research a whole bunch of different schools, because every school has a whole bunch of things that are the same, but a whole bunch of things that are really different. I'm going to do a quick highlight here on myblueprintstory.com. There are a whole bunch of places, a whole bunch of schools on here, Christian universities and colleges across Canada and the United States. A great resource. You can search by major, you can search by location, you can search by what type of athletics are there. Just a whole bunch of different options. When you're doing this research, look into a whole bunch of different things. Most students start by picking a couple of schools that they've heard about or a location that they've heard about. I highly recommend that you kind of maybe pick some opposites, right? So if you're looking at a school in California, maybe pick one on the East Coast or Midwest, just to kind of maybe look at some other things. What you're trying to do here is open up doors. because there are some really fantastic schools that you may never have heard about. That's actually, there may be one out there you've never heard about right now that may be the best one for you. You maybe never heard of Trinity Western before, but Vancouver may be a place you want to check out. Maybe you've never, so there's lots of options out there. And wide. Like I said, maybe check in with guidance counselors. They may give you recommendations, other teachers, where did your parents go? All of those sorts of things. Open up as many options as possible, because at the research stage, there's no commitment and you're just opening up areas to look at. So Jennifer, when we said 4 different things, the first one was what?
Research.
Very good. Okay, at least you're paying attention. I can see you nodding here too. So I
can count on me, Phil.
Okay. All right. What do you think the next thing might be?
Apply.
Apply. Yes. Very good. So the application is something that you're going to need to do. If you don't apply to a school, you'll never get in. That sounds pretty simple, but there's a lot of people who think, I don't know if I'll get in, and so they don't apply. Well, the one guarantee there is if you don't, you won't. Look at lots of opportunities there. I recommend applying, like most people, like your guidance counselors will tell you to apply to 3, pick a top 3. Mine says 3 to 5 here on this slide. The reason why I say 5 is pick your top 3 and then pick 2 wild cards. Ones that you maybe don't think you'd go to, but based on your research, maybe. In this application process, once you start that in, you're going to be introduced to admissions representatives and faculty members and a whole bunch of other things that may completely throw your whole thought process off and actually help you get to the right spot. If you're applying to one of our NACAP schools, while of course we would love you to come to our specific school, we are way more concerned with you finding the right school, the right major for you. So if you're applying to a school and it doesn't look like it's going to be right for you, we'll help you often try to find that right school as well. But again, you want to open up options here. Again, like not as many doors as 40 to 50, like you were researching, but 3 to 5 here. And again, top 3 and then a couple of wild cards. And some of that process, those couple of wild cards just may help you reaffirm your top 1, 2, 3 selections. I know lots of people say, I have my one dream school, I'll apply to that one, and that's the one I want to get into. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't, if you do have a couple others that you eventually say no to, then the reason why you picked your top school is a really good one. I hope that makes sense. I mentioned application fee waiver. The reason why I put that in here is to ask. A lot of places will have an application fee, especially for international students. Ask if you can get that waived. They might not waive it, but they could. So don't just look for places that are free applications. Some of those other places may waive that for you, especially if you're coming from a Christian, like for a lot of our Christian universities and colleges, if you're coming from a Christian school, they may waive that automatically for you. There's a whole bunch of required documents that you're going to need to do in this application process. I'll go through that in a little bit. Here's one of the big differences between Canada and US. Most American students, when they're applying to college, they will narrow down their top 3 during their junior year, and they actually start applying towards the end or just after the end of their junior year. Canadian students, so if you are a senior right now and you're still trying to figure out what you're doing, you might feel like you're behind a typical American student. That might be true, but here's the good news. If you are applying to a Canadian school, most Canadian students don't even start thinking about which university or college they're going to till about November, December, January of their grade 12 year. So if you're one of those seniors, grade 12s, and you still haven't found your place yet, there's still time, and there's lots more people just like you. But if you are grade 9, 10, 11, start thinking about doing that research in that grade 9, 10, 11 years, so that by the time grade 11, grade 12 rolls around, you've got a better choice. And you've done a lot of that research. Deadlines, I'll mention deadlines to just really pay attention to them. Deadlines are in place, not just for the school's benefit, but for yours as well, especially as an international student who might need to apply for study permits or visas. That process can take a long time. And so that we'll have very specific deadlines for you, and really watch those deadlines. Here's a non-international specific deadline story that I'll share with you. My daughter decided at one point that she wanted to apply for a nursing program and did not tell me beforehand, and actually missed the deadline by 2 weeks. So she decided then that she would start as a regular science student and switch into nursing in her second year. That was very unfortunate because she didn't get to start right in the first year. So watch those deadlines. I'll tell you the end of the story. She took her first biology class and realized nursing wasn't going to be for her anyway. She switched over to business, graduated 2 years ago, and is now running her own social media management business. So maybe the deadline missing was fortuitous, but I wouldn't recommend it for most people. I'll mention college placement tests here, ACT and SAT. Ask if the institution that you're applying to is requiring it. Through COVID, a lot of schools are asking questions whether these are required, but in a lot of places they still are. So check in while you're applying to see if you need to get these done, and get them done sooner rather than later, because they often play a big role in the admissions process. So that's a bit of an overview of the application process. Let me do a little bit more detail on some of the things in here. Like I said, application documents. This is not a comprehensive list of all the documents that you might need, but it's a pretty good one. You are going to need to fill out an application. Often that's online. There's often a fee to be paid unless you get it waived. Remember to ask about that. Some places do interviews or consults. What I would really recommend for this is to be as professional as possible in those interviews, but the primary purpose for most of these is not for us to assess how good you are. It is for us to get to know you. So take this opportunity to provide good information about who you are, what you're looking for, and where you're looking for it, while of course providing a good professional representation of yourself and answering the questions that they ask. References, often places will ask for academic or Christian character references. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a future slide. Most places will ask some sort of biographical essay or written statement. Again, I've got another slide on that we'll get to. Everybody's going to ask about your high school grades. Often you can send in just a snapshot of your grades right now in order to get early admission or a quick decision. But we will need a little bit more official documentation later on. But everybody's going to ask about those transcripts. Again, we already talked a little bit about the ACT, SAT scores. And if you've done some post-secondary courses, we are going to need all your college and university transcripts. And then lastly, just about every school is going to ask for some sort of proof of English language proficiency. I have to say that very slowly because then that can prove that I have English language proficiency. Often those are TOEFL, IELTS exam, Duolingo is used an awful lot. Sometimes it might be based on your curriculum if you're doing a North American curriculum or if you've done post-secondary studies, but look to see how that's going to happen. But pretty much if you're coming to Canada, the US, language of instruction is in English, they're going to want to know that your English is up to par, because we want you to be as successful as possible and not necessarily struggling with language, as well as the transition from high school classes into university or college classes. I mentioned we get back to essay guidelines. Sometimes they're essays, sometimes they just ask for a brief tell us about yourself type question. Here is one big hint that I would give you. Be as professional as possible and answer the question they give you. Sometimes we get the type of answer, so it says tell us about yourself, and I get an answer like, I like to play football and video games, and it's all lowercase and that's it. The question said, tell us about yourself, use about 250 words to describe your academic and extracurricular activities. While that person did answer the question, they didn't answer the question fully. If it says use 250 words, try to get to 250 words. Punctuation, grammar matters. This is a college or university application. It's a good idea to do that. Now, if you're texting with somebody or WhatsApping with somebody, that could be a little bit different, but on your application form, be as professional as possible. The other hint here is if it's asking about you to tell about yourself, tell about yourself. Don't tell us what you think the school might want to hear. We want to know about you to make sure that, again, like we've got the right fit. Christian character reference. I'm going to point this one out really quickly and very specifically because lots of places will ask for this. So we're typically looking for some sort of spiritual mentor, a pastor, small group leader, youth leader, Bible teacher, something like that. Big key, can't be a parent. We know that if your father is the pastor, he thinks you're pretty cool, probably, but we're looking for somebody else to tell us that too. And if you're asked for a high school or teacher reference, if your mom's the teacher, don't get her to do it. I know your mom thinks you're awesome, and you probably are awesome, but we are asking for somebody else to say the same thing about you too. So just make sure it's a non-relative on any of these academic things. If you're at a smaller school or smaller church context, that might be a little bit harder, but just put the effort in to find somebody else to do that. When you're sending these documents in, there are tons of ways of doing this. And as I was looking at these slides a little bit earlier, I realized I've been doing this presentation for quite a while because the word fax comes up a couple of times. And I don't know how many people use fax that often. So PDFs, email PDFs, sometimes Microsoft Word or JPEG attachments. Your phones are awesome at taking pictures of stuff, creating a PDF and emailing it. Those are really good. Most places you can upload the documents through the school's application portals. They've got spots right there. Or you can email it to your admissions representative. That's another way to do it. If you have to send something via post mail, write down the date that you sent it. So that if somebody says, I never got it, you can say, well, I sent it 4 weeks ago. And that you may, if you've got good documentation on that, then it makes it a little bit easier for your admissions person to work with you. Make sure you have good labels on everything. Maybe I'll skip over the fax thing. Yeah, it's really interesting. I haven't confirmed fax via email, right? Why wouldn't you just email? Anyway, make sure you put your full name on everything. You might have a really cool nickname, but we deal with tens of thousands of applicants every single year. There's a good chance somebody else has got the same name as you. So make sure we've got your full name so that we can correspond that with everything. And that's one of the reasons sometimes where we ask for passports too. We're not just looking for the name you go by, but your full legal name. I mentioned official documents. I said high school transcripts. Sometimes you can take a photo of your grades and then send it to us. That's often all a school will need to do an initial evaluation of your application. But eventually we are going to need official documents. Official documents are sent directly from one institution to another. They never go through a student's hands. So make sure that you go to your guidance counselor and ask them to send final official transcript. Or if you need your GCSE sent in, make sure that it comes in through the right way. Or Duolingo, that it gets sent in the right way. Not just your copy of that, because schools will need the officials. And the other word there is final official. So if you take a quick screenshot of your grade 12 in progress grades right now and send them to the school, we are going to need another transcript after you've graduated that has the final official seal and comes directly from your school in order to fully admit you at some point. So just that's a really quick point about that. Last thing, I talked a little bit about when people typically apply, but there actually are some really good timelines. If you are applying for a January start, like in spring, so if you're applying to start in January right now, most places would have had a November 1st deadline. That doesn't mean that you can't apply after that. It just means it's going to be difficult to get everything done on time. Some places do have hard deadlines, but again, ask your admissions representative about that. You'll notice for a small semester that will start in September, it says January 1. That's highly recommended, not required. Most places, if it's February or March, you're okay. But especially through this COVID period, we've been finding that study permit and visa applications are taking much longer to process. On the slide here, it says estimated 6 to 8 weeks. That was pre-COVID. You can double that time pretty much everywhere right now. And that's if everything is perfect. So while I say it's that January 1st is a deadline, it's not a real deadline, but in January, really be thinking about getting those things in. Just because you want to give yourself as much time as possible. Oftentimes in January, February, there's some early application deadlines as well too, which get you into early course registration or early housing placements. So just watch for those. So that's a really quick overview of the whole application process. But Jennifer, again, we had 4 things and what was the first one again?
Research.
Got it. Okay, so research, you're looking at a whole bunch of different schools, trying to find out as much as possible about them so that you can eventually do what?
Apply.
Apply. Okay, and you're going to apply to 3 to 5. So we've got research, apply. And what do you think the next thing I recommend doing in the whole process?
Visiting.
You are so on top of this. You must have done this yourself.
I did a long time ago.
So visit. And this is interesting. I have been recommending that international students visit their schools in North America all the time. I don't schedule a trip with your parents at some point to do that. If you'd like, I also know that it's not possible to actually physically visit. When I was doing this presentation pre-COVID, I had to tell people to get really creative. Good news for you, you don't have to get nearly as creative because schools have gotten creative. Information sessions that only used to be hosted on schools' campuses, they now often host an online version. And many of us have started to figure out that those of you who aren't in North America are in different time zones. And so we're doing sessions like at 7 a.m. or our time, or at 11 o'clock at night or 2 in the morning to be able to accommodate your time zones. So watch for those opportunities. Before I said you had to get creative in figuring out how to meet with a faculty member or another student. Zoom and WhatsApp video and Facebook Live and YouTube are all over the place right now. So you have a really good way of figuring this out. If you email a school and say, hey, can you set me up with a student who can walk me around and show me all the places on campus? Most places are going to be more than willing to do that. 3 years ago, not likely. Now, all the time. So you, as an international student, have lots of opportunity to visit. And I said, visit those top 3 to 5 schools. You can do more than that, but definitely those ones that you've applied to or plan to apply to, get some sort of thing in there. Watch for their visit events. Do they have preview sessions or information sessions or something like this that you can sit in on to find out about them? Find out if there's auditions or tryouts. Again, that used to be harder for an international student. It's getting way easier. Zoom auditions for music placement is way easier than it ever was before. I know we can't be happy about too much of the stuff that COVID has done, but this is one thing that it's actually really opened up for us. When you're doing that visit, so if you're just watching virtual tours on on a school's website, you actually don't get a full picture. So again, ask for somebody to take you around or find out if there's one of those in-person tours that you can get, because you want to check out dorms and you want to be able to see right in. Ask students about their dorms. Don't just ask the admissions rep, because students are going to tell you which ones are the most fun, which ones are the cleanest, which ones, they're going to tell you all of that kind of stuff. And it might not be what you think. A shared living space versus apartment, get a student's perspective on which one's better. And you maybe ask for a couple of different versions of that. Talked about virtual tours. Those are all over school websites right now. You can check that. Make sure you ask about safety and security. What type of events happen on campus? Like, are there theater events? Are there whatever, lots of different things. Ask about dining. Don't always ask a student about how good the food is, because I think it's some sort of law somewhere that says college students have to say that their cafeterias are horrible. Ask like a faculty member or one of the staff members, because they typically have to pay to use that, and then they'll give you a very different perspective of what it's like. And they're also not eating there 7 days a week, 3 meals a day, but they'll give you some good hints on there. So sometimes it's a good idea to ask somebody who's not a student about what the food is like. Ask about athletics. Make sure you talk to a faculty member to help you figure out majors and that sort of thing. See if you can go into a chapel. Live chapel streams are all over the place right now. You guys have it so lucky compared to people 3 or 4 years ago, where live streaming of chapel was not a thing. The visit, when you're visiting, you really want to get a sense of the atmosphere, right? So hopefully you get a chance to see some students interacting with faculty. See if you can sit in a class even virtually. Those are really good things. And ask about other things like international student services or third culture clubs or missionary kids clubs. I got another link down there with some virtual tours on there. That's a good thing to check out. But that was actually pre-COVID that we came up with that. Some of the schools have these face-to-face things or in-person ones. So that's a great resource, but also ask your admissions representative if you can get some of those other type of tours done. All right, so that was visit. Now, Jennifer, do you remember the three things still again? What was the first thing?
Research.
Right, research, again, looking at a whole bunch of different schools to try to open up as many doors as possible. Second thing was?
To apply.
Okay, and again, 3 to 5 schools with some wild cards in there. Third thing was?
Visit.
Right, okay, because you want to get a real feel for what the place is like. And then the fourth thing is? Oh, see, you've been waiting for me to change the slides all the way around there. I did that to you on purpose.
I was gonna say go, but I guess decide would be first. So I'm glad I didn't jump the gun.
Yeah, well, you do have to figure out which one's going to be right for you, and then you do need to decide. And most places, when it's time to decide, are going to ask for some money, some sort of deposit. In the US, May 1 is a big day. That's a decision day. And so typically you need to make that decision by then. Once you do that, once you make that deposit, then things like applying for housing, course registration, visa applications, all of that stuff starts to open up. And that's a whole process that I'd like to go into today, but I'm not going to, because that's a little ways down the road yet, and your enrollment representatives will do a great job walking through that. So again, the 4 things then, Jennifer, were?
Research.
Yep.
Apply, visit, decide.
Right. Research, apply, visit, and decide. I'm going to take a couple minutes just to go into one more thing that I know there's been another webinar on, but when you're navigating the US and Canadian admissions process, one of the big things that actually comes up is financial aid. There's other sessions that will spend a lot more detail on this. I just want to do it really quickly because I cannot do a session about navigating the process without talking about financial aid a little bit. So you do need to figure out how you're going to pay for school. There's tuition, there's room, there's board, there's medical insurance fees, there's other fees. Ask about all of them. Ask for budget sheets to see if they've got there. Then there's multiple ways to pay for it. There's financial aid and scholarships. There's endowed awards. Ask the schools about what's the average award amounts, what you might be available to apply for as an international student. And then calculate a full cost. Like make sure you include like things like travel expenses. Do you plan to go home over Christmas holidays or on the summer breaks? Or do you plan on staying in if possible, working on campus or off campus in your place? So calculate all of those expenses out. Your school will be able, that one that you've decided on will be able to help you out with budgeting, but you can even do that during the application process or even research process. They can help you with a budget plan. So couple things, merit scholarships, that's because you qualify for these because of a particular attribute you might have. An academic scholarship, athletic scholarship, performing arts, or other major specific scholarships. Often these don't require, some of these will require some scholarships or auditions. Sometimes you'll be automatically awarded them just based on your like transcript or something like that. But this is what a merit scholarship is. It's free money. You don't need to pay it back, but that's something for you to look into and ask about. There's also need-based aid. Look into your local country to see if you are eligible for some loans or grants. Again, a grant is some money that's given to you and you don't have to pay back. Loans are ones that you do. If you have Canadian or US citizenship, you may be eligible to apply through the FAFSA or some of the Ontario or British Columbia type assistance programs. You can look into those. Ask about work study. Can you work on or off campus and have that apply to your institution? I was an international student. I'm from Canada, but I went to the US. And maybe not as big a travel as the rest of you. It was about a 4-hour drive. But because I was an international student and wasn't allowed to work off campus, they gave me a job cleaning the art studios at the college I went to. Worked out really great because my wife was an art student while I was a cleaner in those art studios. So that I not only got some money out of that, but it worked out really well. Ask about institutional grants and other international need-based scholarships. There's some, often those will require some sort of application, but just ask your financial aid people about these things. Some places will have more or less, but you can ask. Other outside scholarships that for you to kind of look into, if you're a pastor or a missionary kid, maybe there's some connections to your denomination or the fact that you are a pastor or a missionary kid. Perhaps you go to an ACSI school or some type of school. There may be scholarships there. Might be some particular for your country. Go and check a whole bunch of places and just apply for them. There is a lot of money that is available for financial aid for students that never gets awarded any year in any given year because nobody asked about it. Here's a good example. My niece was going off to university and had applied for in a psychology program. She applied for a music scholarship because her city had a scholarship for students going to university and doing music. But I didn't say that she was going for music, right? I said that she was psychology. She played flute in her high school band. Nobody else applied for that scholarship that year, so she got it, a $5,000 scholarship. So the worst they can say is no. And if they do, you're no further off than the time that it took to apply. But many of these scholarships are $500, $1,000. Some of them could be $5,000 or $10,000. I can't promise you'll get any of them. In fact, I can promise you'll get a lot of no's. Okay, but how many hours do you have to put in to be able to earn $500? If you can apply and get a lot of no's, and as soon as you get that one yes to get a $500, it can be really worth it. So spend a lot of time, especially through your grade 12 and senior year, just researching and applying, taking shots in the dark. The worst they can say is no, but if it's a yes, it could be worth quite a bit. Last thing, as far as funding goes, you can do summer jobs. There's the bank of mom and dad, and other money that you've saved up, and then lines of credit. Sometimes if your family is not eligible for national loans or things like that, it's because you might be in a better financial position, but being in a better financial position makes lines of credit available to you that other people may not have. So that's a kind of brief overview of financial aid. That's very fast. There are other really great resources out there. I would definitely recommend diving into some of those, especially at some of the institutions that you're applying to. That's it from me. But again, Jennifer, can you give me the four big things?
Sure. Research, apply, visit, then decide.
Absolutely, right. And you can start your research as early as grade 9 or 10, or even in grade 12. The application process has to happen in grade 12, but you can be doing that all the way along. And if you're just following those four things, pretty much in that order, then you're going to be well set up. And the big thing right here where it says any questions, make sure to ask questions throughout the process. There are people at every one of these institutions, particularly our NACAP schools, and they are just eager to answer the questions that you've got. So thank you for tonight. Now, Jennifer, I asked you a bunch of questions here. Do you have questions for me based on this?
Yeah, I actually did have one. In your apply process, you mentioned that the part of the application was an interview. And I think the primary goal of that is for the university to get to know the potential student. But is that also an appropriate time for the prospective student to ask some pretty good questions to get to know the university? If not, when is a better time?
It will depend on how formal the interview is. Some places have a very formal interview. If that's the case, they'll give you a particular time to ask specific questions, and then you can. Other places, that interview or consult is an informal process. Let's just get to know you. I can think of a couple of different schools who have a very specific process on that, but it's really informal. Tell me about yourself. What are you excited about? What aren't you excited about? Tell me about your faith. In those, definitely share yourself and then ask back, why is that an important question to you? Because that, like you said, Jennifer, that's a good time to ask questions back as well, because you're going to get a sense of what's important to that college or university, which will help you decide whether that's important to you or not, and whether that's going to be a good fit. That's a great question.
I thought of another one here. You mentioned earlier about asking faculty about dining, or students about dorm life, or even asking to view chapel live or whatever. if I don't know where to start, who's the best point of contact to connect me with some of those people on the streets, if you will?
Yep, that's another great question. So there's an admissions representative. They might be called an admissions counselor or an enrollment advisor or some, start with them, especially like I said, with our NACAP schools. We pride ourselves on being personal, wanting to answer your questions. So start with them. Actually, and if you don't know who to ask the financial aid question, start with that same person. Treat them kind of like a concierge. Don't send them 80 million emails a day, because we have lots of people, but feel free to ask them questions regularly about the process. We are here to help. That's what our job is. It's fun for us to meet people around the world and be able to help find them the right place and answer the right questions for them.
Is it best to just use the school's website and go to like the admissions tab and find a generic email? Or sometimes schools will be really good about listing their admissions faculty or staff members. Should I just randomly pick someone that might respond to me, or is there a better process?
Yeah, all of those are good. The one thing that's not good is to email all of them. But what I would highly recommend is to go in and if, like as you said, some places have a good listing. If you're from a particular area, see if you can find the person who's assigned to you. If you can't find that, look for a general email. The other thing that I've seen really blossom through COVID is these live chat things on a website. Ask there, can I be put in touch with somebody? Some of those are bots, but they're probably going to give you the right answer about who to contact anyway. Or lots of times it's actually a live person on that live chat, and they're there to help you answer those questions. And they might not be able to answer all of them directly, but they'll help you get to the person who will.
Wonderful. Well, I think I only had one more question. It's more of a curiosity for me. I know you've been in admissions for a while, and I know you've been working with international students for a while. Is there a pleasant surprise that the international students find when they get to, well, specifically Trinity Western for you, but is there some really like aha moment that sometimes is kind of unexpected, that maybe it's one isolated incident, maybe it's a trend or a pattern that's developing, but more curiosity is do anything stick out for you like that?
So I'll give you two. So US students coming to Canada are international students for us. The one big thing that almost all of them get the pleasant surprise is that we have a different time for Thanksgiving than they do. So they get to do Thanksgiving in October as a part of Canadian Thanksgiving, and then again in November. That was my favorite thing I learned going the one way. Probably the biggest thing to understand as an international student coming, we all love having international students on our campus. And the reason why we do is for the same kind of, it's the same, but it's very related to the reason why lots of times international students want to come to North America, to be able to study here, meet different cultures, learn something and get ahead. Well, Canadian students, American students want to learn often the very same thing from you. And we, again, here, particularly at Trinity Western, where we have a lot of international students, we really value the fact that the world comes here, because not all of our students can make that travel to that world over there. So that's one of the things that I would say, and that you'll have to read your own campus on this to see how much we want to learn from you and how much we want to teach you too. And it goes both ways.
Wonderful. Well, I learned quite a bit, and hopefully anyone watching on this webinar did as well. And then certainly we will have this posted on the website for weeks and months to come, so it can reach as many people as we can with it, because I think it's a good message. Thank you so much for taking what I think can feel overwhelming, of where to start, and it's a big step. It's a big decision to make, and it's a big step in your life, and to break it down to just 4 simple steps. And I'm not saying that they're all going to be easy, but it really is simple, right? I mean, it's 4 basic concepts, each with multiple facets. And certainly when you get to the decision step, that could be huge and overwhelming as well. But again, simple, maybe not easy, but certainly simple. And I appreciate your time breaking that down for us.
Yeah, the one thing I can guarantee is if you don't do those things, then the decision is bigger and harder and more apt to be wrong. But if you do
Sure.
those things, it's not that it's going to be easy, but you'll get through it, and it'll be you'll make a better decision at the end.
Absolutely. And that's what we all want, right? We want
Right.
every student to find where they're meant to go and where they're meant to be so they can truly blossom and grow and fulfill their destiny, really. And so we all do share that goal. And the only way to even try to come up with that good list is to, like you said, do your due diligence, research a lot of options, and don't narrow it down to the application to only, one or two. I think 3 to 5 is absolutely a sweet number. I would say 5 for sure, because you never know.
Keep your doors open, right? It's not necessarily because you might get a no, and you might get a no, but most places, if you've got good grades, you'll be fine. But leave it open, because you also never know how your life will change through the process too.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
the opportunity. This is fun for me. This is one of the things that I love doing. And I love hearing the students who have said, I followed the process and you helped me get to the right spot. That's my favorite thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Phil.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jennifer.
Good night.